I'm Skip Elsheimer of the AV Geeks Educational Archive, and I have a collection of probably now more than 23,000 educational films. These were films that were on 16 millimeter. And what's going to be on this DVD are films from a particular genre, which we call the social guidance genre. So these are films that were made to help young boys to become socially adept.
A boy batting struck out, and what a fuss he made. He was a young man in years, but the way he behaved was more in keeping with a 5-year-old.
And so it deals with some of the issues that men have to deal with, such as some of the moral issues that they run into, some of the developmental and emotional issues that men run into, and also career choices, you know, what you should be taking in high school to pursue your career, what vices you should avoid, and, you know, should you steal a car?
Quiet now. This is where it begins. This is the point of no return. After this bit, you don't go back anymore.
You can often watch these films and think, wow, these are very stodgy and very conservative, very corny. Well, you know, they are told and framed for that contemporary audience. So they do seem very conservative. But a lot of the people that they're referring to and the educational consultants are talking about very forward-thinking things. And so they realized at some point we have to talk about sex education.
The parents of teenagers who have blundered blindly into infection are sometimes more blind than the children they condemn. John Camp is all too familiar with typical parental reactions.
It's that sex education they get in the schools.
You see parents in this film who are clueless about educating their kids about sex.
Oh, I'm surprised, all right. But only that he had the guts to do it. He's the biggest penny waste I ever saw.
My husband and I can both tell you, it's not Junior's fault.
It's all his fault. I just can't do a thing with him anymore.
And what's clear, the filmmaker is saying, is that the parents are not responsibly teaching their kids about these issues. And so somebody has to step up and do it. And so this Dance to Little Children is kind of a rallying cry to civic leaders to say, we have to deal with this problem. Kids are having sex.
It's a confusing world we live in. Day and night we're bombarded with reminders of sex, liquor, smoking, even drugs. It all gets pretty unreal.
You know, it's interesting when I show these films across the country at different places. I have a following of people who keep coming back when I do the shows. So I know that there's some reason that they keep coming back. And what I figured out is when you first watch the films, they're corny and they're funny. So you can laugh at the awkwardness of that time period. But then maybe what gets people coming back to my shows is that kind of sense of history and that sense of, wow, this was kind of a social problem. And it's kind of like picking up a newspaper from the 30s. You look at the newspaper and you see what the headlines were, what the big problems were, but then, you know, in page 5, you see all the little tiny problems, the little minor issues, you know, the little police reports and all this, and you get a sense, and then you see the advertising, and you get a sense of what was important to us back then, and what they wanted us to buy, and how we lived back then. And so there's a subtle other aspect to this, which is that you learn a lot. The filmmakers didn't intend this, but you learn a lot about how people lived at different time periods.
All right, you kids, go on home. Hurry up, run along. Go on.
Stop it, Eddie. Stop it. You don't know what you're
Come on, get off, boy. Come on, Duke, take the car off. You hear what I said, kids? Go on home now. Go on home. Pull over. Pull over the car.
Mrs. Jackson?
I have a website, avgeeks.com, and people contact me looking for films that they saw as kids, and that really made an impression on them. And so, yeah, I do get to talk to kids who, or people who saw these films at different time periods, and they're trying to track down. And usually it's because they're haunted by some film that they saw.
Darling, you mustn't put him in the water.
What's great is that not all these films are corny. Some of these were very well-crafted films that still hold up today. A lot of these films were shot using normal kids. Some of them were shot in real schools across the country. And you do get to see kind of parts of America and people who aren't really actors acting in these films. I mean, sometimes it's painfully obvious that they're not actors. You know, the acting is not very good, but you do get to see a sampling of the United States, something that you wouldn't necessarily see in a Hollywood film.